This week, we laid to rest Reverend Billy Graham. About 10 years ago, I read a very interesting article written by Reverend Graham. In the article, he talks about what formed and shaped the topic of all of his preaching. He said the very first time he preached in a stadium was way back in 1953, his first stadium preaching event. It was a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The very first time on a Monday at Texas Stadium, 1953, there were 25,000 people in that stadium. After he gave his sermon, at the end of his sermon, he gave what he always called the altar call. When he would tell people, come forward, because if you do not recognize Christ in public, he will not know you in the private. When he did the altar call, 7,000 people came forward to be prayed over by William Graham, the second night of Tuesday. Another 25,000 people in the stadium. And again, he preaches, and at the end of his preaching, he had the altar call, and 9,000 people came forward that night, 2,000 more than the previous night. Wednesday night, the very last night of his preaching mission. After he gave a sermon, he did the altar call, and to his shocking surprise, only 5 people came forward. He knew instantly something was wrong. So he went back to the pulpit on the platform. He told the people, stop the music. And he looked at a crowd of 25,000 people. He said, what is wrong tonight? What happened? Monday night, 7,000 people came forward. Tuesday night, 9,000. But tonight, only 5? What went wrong? And one man, one really big man sitting right there in front, probably providentially, he stood up and raised his hand, and you can see this man a mile away. He was so big. And Reverend Graham said, do you know what went wrong? He said, yes, Reverend Graham, I know exactly what went wrong tonight. And Reverend Graham called the man up to the platform, up to the pulpit. And he said to the man, tell me and tell everyone here what went wrong tonight, why only 5 people came forward at the altar call. And he said to Reverend Graham, he said, Reverend Graham, tonight you never mentioned the cross of Christ. You never said it once. The man said, it's the cross that makes the difference in our life. It is the cross for a person who feels beaten down that they can one day rise again. It is the cross whenever a person feels worthless that they know that they still have value. It is the cross that gives a person hope, knowing that maybe today, maybe tomorrow, things will get better. And Reverend Graham said that very night after this man spoke his words, and he was right, he said to himself, from that day forward, I will always preach on a cross. For all those years, all those stadium missions, all that preaching that he did, he always talked about the cross. Because he realized in life, when you take God out of your life and you take the cross out of your life, you're left with what? Nothing. A void. Darkness, chaos. That's what went wrong in today's gospel reading. Now, the gospel today comes out of the 2nd chapter of Mark, verses 13 to 25. We just want to look at verse 13 and 14 and 15 and 16. Let's take a look. Now, it says there, Jesus went up to Jerusalem, and he found in a temple. Stop right there. Don't read the rest of it. Just take your eyes off the wall. Now, a few people are still reading. Take your eyes off the wall. We're picking up the rest in a moment. I just want you to listen to this. Jesus went into the temple. Now, the Jewish temple is an interesting place. The Jews had only one temple. That was in Jerusalem. They're unlike the Catholics. You know, we have over 1,000 Catholic churches in the United States. There are thousands of Catholic churches throughout the world. Probably a 10-mile radius around Lower Burl, there's probably a dozen Catholic churches. But the Jews had only one church, which they call a temple or a synagogue, and that was in Jerusalem. And this temple took 46 years to build. You would think if something took you 46 years to build, you only had one of them, then you would do your best not to defile it. But look what they did. Now, put your eyes back on it. We now read the rest. For anyone who read it already, you know what I'm talking about. Now, Jesus went up to Jerusalem. He found in the temple area those who sold oxen, sheep, and doves, as well as the money changers seated there. He made a whip of cords and drove them all out of the temple area with the sheep and the oxen, and spilled the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And to those who sold doves, he said, take these out of here and stop making my Father's house a marketplace. You see what they did? They turned the temple into something you couldn't even recognize. It became a place of commerce rather than a place of God. The temple, instead of being a place where you could find promise, they found products that had become. The temple, the church, instead of being a place where you would find comfort, you now found commodities, that is, it had become. The temple was to be a place where you could find solace, not solicitation, as it had become. The temple was to be a place that would create a marked difference in your life, not become a marketplace, as it had become. You see, they lost sight of God until Jesus tried to say, get everything out of here and let's purify the temple. Let's bring it back to what it should have been in the beginning. How easy it is in life to lose sight, to lose focus, to lose purpose, to lose your sense of priority. To realize that Christ is first, God is first, but family is second, but you lose sight of all that. You don't realize it when you get it all tangled up with many things that really don't matter. You see, every person in Mass this morning, everyone here without exception, even the little ones, everyone here carries a cross. Everyone here has a cross. And our cross changes in weight over a period of time. Now, you might be sitting there this morning, you might be saying to yourself, this is the lightest my cross has ever been in my life, and that's the case for you this morning. Hallelujah. Celebrate it, because it's going to change. You might be there sitting this morning saying to yourself, the cross I carry right now at this point in my life, it has never weighed this much. I don't know how I can continue to stand tall and erect, because it weighs so much. But if it weighs a lot, what should you do? You hold on to what's known as the Holy Week experience. You know, Holy Thursday night, Jesus in the upper room with his disciples, they're sharing a meal together. They're having a good time together. Now, Jesus knows the future, they don't. And then the next day, Jesus Christ is crucified. How quickly things went from good to bad. How quickly in life things go from good to bad. It can happen all in the same day. You might say right now, my cross is light. But tonight, you might get news of someone you love that was tragically killed, and then your light cross now becomes heavy. How quickly things change. But then what happened for Jesus when he said yes to the cross on Good Friday? What happened 3 days later? Jesus Christ, Easter Sunday morning, triumphs over the cross. He resurrects over his pain and agony, his suffering and his darkness. And that's what you got to realize as you carry your cross. No matter what it is that you're going through this morning, how light, how heavy, how dark, how difficult, whatever you're going through, you got to say to yourself, what I know is this, as I follow the path of Christ, Jesus was triumphant as he carried his cross. Because with the cross experience, there's always the hope of the resurrection. Your pain, your suffering, your darkness, your tunnel will always end. When? How long do I have to endure? It's difficult to say. It might be a day, it might be a week, it might be a month, it might be a year, it might be a decade, it might be a score. But what you know is this, it in fact one day will end. There's always a period of time between Crucifixion Friday and Resurrection Sunday. For Jesus it was 3 days, for you it might be 3 years. But what you got to know is this, it in fact will end. The suffering, the pain you're going through, it will not last forever. Even if it takes you to your last breath. When you take your last breath, your pain at that point is ended. It is over. You've resurrected. I'll leave you with these words this man said when Reverend Grant was shocked that only 5 people came forward the third night of his preaching. He said that night changed the content of his preaching forever because he learned from this man what he should always preach on, and that was the cross. When he said, I don't know why only 5 have come forward tonight. And this very, very tall man sitting in the front, so big, you could see him a mile away. He stood up and said, I know why. And Reverend Graham courageously called him up to the pulpit on the platform and said, tell us why. And he said, Reverend Graham, tonight, you never mentioned the cross. Because it is the cross of Christ that makes a difference for all people. It is the cross when a person feels beaten down, they realize they can rise again. It is the cross that allows a person who feels worthless to know that they still have value. It is the cross that gives a person hope. So whatever size cross you have this morning, and everyone here without exception carries a cross. It might be light, it might be heavy. Well, when you follow Christ and you follow his cross, what you know is this: no matter what you experience, the cross always gives you hope. That today, tonight, tomorrow just might turn out to be better.